الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. So we are in the fourth session on the Furu' al-Din, and we did the Salah, we did the Sawm, we did the Hajj, and today we are doing the Zakat. Inshallah, in the next session we will do the Khums. So the Zakat and the Khums, they are two types of Islamic financial expenses or obligations when it comes to finances. So the Zakat, can you go to the next slide, please? The Zakat is the alms, the tax. So it is one of the five pillars that Islam is built on, and it is also one of the Furu' al-Din, one of the 10 Furu' al-Din. So there are narrations when it comes to the pillars. This is separate from the Usul al-Din. There are some narrations that say Islam, the main obligations in Islam are Salah, Zakat, Hajj, and that is one of them, but it is also one of the 10 Furu' al-Din. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in Surah At-Tawbah verse 103 to 104, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا. Zakat is from the it means to purify. So when you Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, take money from them, let them donate, let them give sadaqah, let them give charity, and this is how it will purify them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِنَّ صَلَاتَكَ سَكَنٌ لَهُمْ. And in another hadith, in a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, Rasulullah says that the prayer may not be accepted from the worshipper who withholds zakat. He says Allah, the Most High, has decreed that you pay zakat the same way He has decreed that you pray your daily prayers. So there are some Muslims, they come and they look at the obligations as some are more important than others. Prayer is important, fasting is important, but Hajj is not important, zakat and khums are not important. They're all obligations. It's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects from us. And in a hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says that on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall resurrect some of the dead from their graves with their hands glued to their necks, so much that they cannot move them. And they will be taunted by the angels. And then he says those were the ones who were meager and they did not give their zakat. They are the ones who withheld the right of God to be taken from their property. So they didn't give their zakat. There's a portion of our wealth, there's a portion of our money, there's a portion of what we have. It does not even belong to us. It does not even belong to us. It belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the poor and to the needy. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in one verse, في أموالهم حق معلوم للسائل والمحروم. A portion of my money does not even belong to me. Just like right now, if a person in the United States fails to pay taxes, what's the government going to do? They're going to go and chase you, run after you until you pay. Salaam alaikum. And they say that a portion of this money belongs to the government. You're living here, you have benefits, you have the streets, you have the roads, you have all of these things. So a portion of that belongs to the benefits that you're receiving. Similarly, a portion of our money needs to go to the poor, needs to go to those who are in need, it needs to go to these projects in our community. And this is how a Muslim community is built, through the zakat, through the sadaqat, and through the khums. Now, when we talk about zakat, can you go to the next slide, please? When we talk about the zakat, there's a general and specific meaning of zakat. The general meaning of zakat is sadaqah, any type of giving in the way of Allah. This includes the sadaqah mustahabba, I put money in a box. This includes the wajib sadaqah. For example, on the day of Eid, we have to come and give zakat al-fitra. This includes the khums. This includes any type of giving charity in the way of Allah. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just refers to it as zakat because it purifies you. So this is the general meaning. However, there's a specific meaning to the word zakat. So when Allah talks about the zakat in general, الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ, those who uphold prayer and give zakat. This is general. But then sometimes it's talking about the specific meaning of zakat. And there are two types of zakat that are specifically obligatory upon people. And what are those? What are those types of zakat? You have the zakat that's given on the day of Eid, the zakat that's given on Eid al-Fitr, and you have the zakat that is given based on some of the things that you have. For example, if you have gold, if you have silver, if you have cattle, if you have wheat, we'll mention that. So everyone knows the zakat that's given on the day of Eid al-Fitr. That's called zakat al-Fitra. And then there is another zakat which we will explain. So can we go to the next slide, please? Zakat al-Fitra. Zakat al-Fitra is the zakat that is given on the day of Eid al-Fitr. When is that due? It is due at the time of sunset, ghurub, on the eve of Eid. So the last day of Ramadan. The last day of Ramadan, after you, when you're breaking your fast, or as soon as you break your fast, or before that, it's due upon the person who is baligh, person who is gone through the age of puberty, they go to the age of taklif, everything is wajib on them. They have to be sane. Remember, we talked about the aql as one of the conditions for all obligations. And this person cannot be unconscious. Say the month of Ramadan came and I was in a coma the whole time. Then that does not apply. This person needs to be aware. This person needs to be alert of what is wajib on them. This person should not be poor. If they are poor, if they don't even have an income, if they don't have the money, then they are not required to give zakat. They receive zakat. So not poor and not a slave. And it must be given on his behalf. This person is the owner of the money. They have money. They give on their behalf and they give on the behalf of anyone in the family. So who does this apply to? This applies to the head of the household. So if there's a head of the household, the one that covers the expenses, the one that works, the one that pays the bills. Sometimes it's the father, sometimes it's the mother. Different families have different circumstances. Whoever is the one who provides for the family, this is zakat al-fitra. It is wajib upon them to give zakat on behalf of themselves and on behalf of anyone in that family. So say a father, and then there's a wife, and then there are 3 kids. So that means this person has to give zakat on behalf of 5 people. 5 people, and this must be given in the morning on the day of Eid. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى وَذَكَرَ اسْمَ رَبِّهِ فَصَلَّى. Give zakat, and then go and pray Salat al-Eid. What should be given? How much is given? It's called 1 sa'. Sa' is about 3 kilograms of food. And this is basically the staple food, such as wheat, barley, dates, raisins, rice, or something similar. For example, if I eat meat every day, then I consider the meat, the value of the meat. If I can't afford eating meat every day, then I consider something less. Dates are a little bit more expensive. Some things are a little bit cheaper, some things are a little bit more expensive. Every year, here, for example, in America, the mosques, they release a pricing for the local community. Last year, I believe it was about $15 per person. Some people said around $10 to $15 per person. So if you have 5 people, if you want to go with the 10, you give $50. If you want to go with the 15, you give more. So it needs to be given on behalf of every person, and it could be given in a monetary value instead, as long as you give it to them for this person to go and they buy food with it. You're giving them Basically, you're telling them, I'm giving you this money so that you buy food. So this is regarding Zakat al-Fitra. Zakat al-Fitra, this is the zakat that we all, on the day, it's wajib upon every person. The head of the household gives, even for the younger, even for the children. The head of the household needs to give for them on the day of Eid al-Fitr. This is one day out of the year. Any questions regarding Zakat al-Fitra? Okay. Now, we'll go to the next slide. And this is the annual zakat, which is basically the zakat that is given for special items and things that a person may own. Now, someone probably during our time, for many of us, this does not apply to us. Many of us, this does not apply to us. This is why we give khums instead. But if this applies to you, then you have to give this zakat and you have to give the khums. So the annual zakat, alms, is given on the following things. The two coins, silver and gold minted coins. It's basically the coins that are used for before the currency that people used to have. They had dinar and dirham. The dinar is the gold coin and the dirham is the silver coin. So if someone has the dinar, that means they actually own gold. They actually own gold coins, and they used to use that as a transaction. So this is one of them. And then if you have crops, so in the right now, how many of us have gold, silver, and gold coins? Probably not many people have silver and gold coins. You have silver and gold coins? Are they like type of jewelry, or are they you actually buy and sell with them? The collector ones. This does not apply unless it has a specific weight. It might apply to it. But we're talking, for example, this does not apply to gold jewelry that a lady has. For example, maybe she has a whole kilogram, a whole 5 pounds of gold. This would not apply. This only applies to the coins that people have and they use as a transactional item. Okay, so this is one. Only Taha has silver, gold and silver coins. No one else has. Second, if you have crops such as wheat, barley, dates, and raisin. How many of you have crops? How many of you are farmers? No one's a farmer here? Okay. So wheat, barley, dates, and raisin. And they call these al-ghallat al-arba'a, the 4 ghallat. So this is one. Third is if you have a camels or cattle, like cow, buffalo, sheep, and goats. If you also have those, then zakat would apply to those. So this is the third item. And the fourth item is revenue from trade in silver and gold coins only, not cash or any other currency. So if you're making trade with silver or gold coins, say for example, someone has a lot of those collectible items, and then they trade with them. They trade when the market is hot. They come and they sell, they buy. This one, if the conditions apply, for example, the quantity of gold should not be less than mithqal sayrafi. So mithqal sayrafi is a coin or a bullion. It's a unit of weight equivalent to 4.608 grams. So if it's more than that, or it should not be less than that, so the percentage is 2.5%. For every 3 mithqals increase thereafter, the same percentage must be paid. So every 3 mithqal you go up, you give 2.5%. As for the silver, the quantity should not be less than 105 mithqals. The percentage due is 2.5. For every 21 mithqals thereafter, the same percentage should be paid. So these are the 4 times that zakat is given. And we're not talking about zakat al-fitra. We're talking about the wajib zakat on the silver and gold coins, on the crops, on the cattle, and on the revenue from trade. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so we said that if you have gold and silver coins, you have to pay zakat. However, there's a criteria. One is that 11 months have to pass, leading to the 12th month, while you have ownership of it. So you have to have this for a while, a year. If you have it for less than a year, it would not apply. Second, the silver and the gold should be of the minted type, used as a means of monetary exchange. So that means jewelry is exempted. I have silver in my house. I have silverware in my house. But it's not the coin. Or I have jewelry. There's necklaces and earrings and all these things, rings. Probably some of them have gold, even though gold is haram for men. For women, it is allowed. But here, if you have gold in jewelry, it would not apply. Zakat would not apply to it. It only applies to the coins that you have. And a third condition or criteria is that the ability of the owner of these metals to use them freely all year round. So if I have property, but I don't have control of it. Right now, for example, maybe someone has something in a country and they don't have access to that country. They have no control of it whatsoever. There's a war, there's something, they have no control of it. Zakat would not apply. And another criteria is that the person who it's wajib upon them has to be an adult, has to be mukallaf, baligh, and they have to have a sound mind. So say for example, you have a child and they have a lot of these gold coins. They have hundreds of them that zakat would apply to them. Zakat does not apply because this person is still a child. Now it's mustahab for the parents to give, but this would not apply right now. Okay, so go to the next slide, please. Okay, criteria for zakat to apply on crops. We said the criteria for the gold and silver. What's the criteria for the crops? The wheat, the barley, the dates, and the raisins. One is that the minimum weight taxable of any of these crops when it is dry shall be 300 sa'. So that means a cubic measure equivalent to approximately 847 kilograms. So it means you have a lot. So right now in the Middle East, you go to some people, they have farms. They have these large farms, like right now in Karbala, for example. There's close to the shrine of Imam Hussein. There are some people, they have farms in their home. They have a lot of farms in their home. And they have date trees, palm trees. So if, for example, at the end of the harvest, they have a lot of dates. There's hundreds of trees, and they come and they collect these dates. And when they're dry, not wet, because when they're wet, they're heavier. When they're dry, they weigh more than 847 kilograms, which is possible because it adds up. Then they would have to give zakat. They would have to give zakat. So this is one. Another condition is that the crops should be owned by the person who's mukallaf. So this person has to have ownership. It's not that I went and I bought, for example, something, or I went and I found it or something. It's not. I need to be the owner. Okay, there are conditions. If the land is cultivated with these crops, if the land cultivated with these crops is irrigated by either rain or river water, that does not call for great effort. The zakat shall be 10%. So here you see there's the system of equality in Islam. It shows that if you went and you, for example, you used your own source of irrigation, then you would pay less zakat than if you just relied on the rain and the river water. Because this is coming easy for you. It's coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if you went and you exhausted yourself, you would give less. So here are the rules. If the land cultivated with these crops is irrigated by either rain or river water, that does not call for a great effort, the zakat shall be 10%. So you give 10% of every 847 kilograms. And then if it is irrigated by hand, a pump, or that like, zakat payable shall be 5%. Okay? So that means this required more effort. You had to pump and you had to come and carry the water, so you give less. You give 5%. If the source of irrigation varies using both the ways mentioned in A and B, payment of the zakat shall be 7.5%. So somewhere in between. So you used a little bit of the river, a little bit of the rain, and you also had to kind of supplement it, then it would be 7.5. So so basically you look at how much effort did you put in it, and this is regarding these type of crops. So say for example I had orange trees. I had a lot of orange trees. Do I pay zakat? Hmm? No. Zakat is wheat, barley, dates, and raisin. So these are the ghalat al-arba'a. And this is why a lot of people ask, why do we have to pay khums? Because zakat is very limited. For example, right now, how many of us are paying zakat on the gold and the silver? No one. How many is paying zakat on the wheat, barley, dates, and raisins? Only the farmers. Those who have a lot and those who are growing this. So, basically, it does not apply to many people. Next slide, please. Okay, the criteria for zakat to apply on sheep, goats, and cattle, camels, and buffaloes. So here, when it comes to the cattle, the sheep, the goats, the cattle, and the camels and the buffaloes, you see that there are tax brackets. You know, right now when you go and you file for taxes, there are tax brackets. If you are a high income, you fall in this tax bracket. Whichever tax bracket you fall in, you have to give some type of tax. In zakat, it also has the same. So if you have camels, so say a person, he owned many camels. People in the desert back then in the Middle East and many other places, they have a lot of camels. They have other things, even here, not only in the Middle East. So if you have a minimum number of 5 camels, if you have 5 camels, how many sheep do you have to give for zakat? You give 1 sheep in zakat. So this is basically the tax. This is the they call it the nisab. The word in Arabic is nisab. So if you have 5, you give 1. For every 5 extra camels thereafter, and up to and including 25, the rate is 1 sheep for every 5 camels. So if you have 10 camels, you give 2 sheep. If you have 3 camels, you give. If you have 15, you give 3. Up to 25, you give 5. And then after, if you have 25 camels, 5 sheep is the number that should be given in zakat. However, if you own 26 camels, the zakat due shall be 1 2-year-old she camel, basically a baby camel. 36 would warrant 1 3-year-old she camel. So the older the camel is, the more expensive it gets. So this is basically, you know, this is not something that we are really worried about because not a lot of people have this, but those who own camels and sheep and livestock, they know these numbers because this is something that is very familiar with them. But if you come and you ask me, for example, I have 70 camels, what do I have to give? I don't know. I'm going to have to look it up. But if you go and you ask the experts, those who this is something that is basically their life revolves around this, they know the numbers very well. When it comes to sheep, what are the brackets? The minimum on which zakat is due is 40. So if you, yes, sister. No, they don't give. They only give up to the 5. Once it hits the next bracket, then they give more. Yes. So if they have sheep, the minimum on which zakat is due is 40. So say someone has 39 sheep. Do they have to give zakat? No. 1 sheep should be given away in zakat for that number of sheep. So if you have 40, you give 1. 2 sheep for 121. So if you have 121, then it goes to 2 sheep. 3 sheep for 201. 4 for 301. Any number of sheep exceeding 400, and the rate is 1 sheep for every 100 of them without a ceiling. Basically, you keep 1 for every 100. So in the beginning, you see at 40, and then after that, it hits 100. So it's not every 40. Okay? Next slide, please. When it comes to the cattle and the buffalo, meaning the cow and buffalo, these are all the same. The minimum that is taxable is 30 of either. Zakat payable on that number is a calf. So if you have 30, the minimum 30 cows or buffalo, you give one calf for every 30. And that has just entered the second year of its life. So you have to give one that's a little bit bigger. It's entered its second year of its life. If the number was 40, zakat due shall be 1 2-year-old she-cow buffalo. So these are some of the conditions. Further conditions, and this applies to the camels, the sheep, and the cattle, is that livestock must be of the kind that graze in the fields. So they go and they eat from God, basically. It rains and they eat. Should it need to be fed by supplements, even during part of the year, there shall be no zakat. So if you feed your own cattle, you don't give zakat on them. See how Islam is very easygoing. If you come and you spend money at parts of the year because of there was drought, there was no rain, you went and you had to give it food, then you don't give zakat. This zakat applies for those who basically they go and they herd their sheep and their cattle and they eat from the grass outside. So they ate, their rizq came from Allah, they grew, then you give back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one condition. Second is that the owner or his guardian should have the right of disposal over his livestock throughout the year. So you need to have access to these. If you don't have ownership, you don't have access to them, it does not apply. And a third condition is that a minimum of 11 months. So you need to have them for 11 months to a year. So if you have them for 7 months, you don't give. Should have elapsed under the ownership of the same person before any zakat becomes due. Any questions? Yes, sister. You don't give zakat. No. Because you had to spend from them. You had to spend on them. So this is God's way of being just with everyone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, since you had to give, then you had to feed it, then you don't need to give. But if your animals they went and they were grazing and they ate from what the rain, the food that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided, then give back to the poor. But usually in the past, people would with cattle, they would just go out. Those who had a lot of cattle, they would go out of the city, and the cattle, they eat the food that's outside and they survive. Yes. Yes, sister. Okay, this is the next slide, inshallah. Did anyone have their hands up here? You had your hand up? Okay. Go to the next slide, please. Who takes the zakat? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah chapter 9, Surah At-Tawbah, verse 60, إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم. So Allah says in the Quran, zakat expenditures are only for the poor and for the needy. Fuqara and masakin. Faqir is the person who's really poor. Miskin is the needy. They're a level a little bit less, meaning they're better than the faqir, but they're still in need. They're still in need. And we'll explain who is the poor person. The poor and for the needy, and for those employed to collect zakat. So there were people, the Prophet, he would send them to go and collect zakat. That was their job. Their job was to go and collect zakat. They would take a portion. Of course, not whatever they want. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them. That's called وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا. Because they would have to travel and they would have to take these camels and it was a hard job. So they would take a small portion. وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا. And then وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُم, and for bringing hearts together for Islam. There were people during the time of the Prophet, like Abu Sufyan and many others, at the end, after the Prophet fought many wars and battles with them, later on, they saw that everyone had become Muslim, but they still needed some type of motivation to become Muslim. So what did Rasulullah do? Rasulullah came and he gave them these camels and he gave them these cattle, and he came and he told them, you could have it you could have it. Some of the mu'mineen, some of the believers, they said, Ya Rasulullah, you're giving these guys and you didn't give us? Rasulullah told them they are in a special category called wal mu'allafati qulubuhum, meaning their hearts are kind of on the basically on the edge. They haven't really made up their mind. Sometimes you have to just give them something, they'll come, they'll join the religion of Islam. This is how some people are. Some people, they join out of their heart has fully joined. Other people, you have to come and give them some money to encourage them. So this applied to them. So Rasulullah would give zakat to those people. وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَفِي الرِّقَابِ, and for freeing captives or slaves. So if you have a slave and you want to free the slave, you could give zakat to free the slave. وَالْغَارِمِينَ, and for those in debt. Say someone during the time of Rasulullah, he comes to Rasulullah, he tells Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, I'm in debt. He tells Imam Ali, I'm in debt, I'm madyun. They're going to take away my house, I don't have food, I have something. Rasulullah would come and give them zakat. وَالْغَارِمِينَ وَفِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, and for the cause of Allah. وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ, and for those who are stranded travelers. Ibn Sabil is, for example, say someone was passing by, they're traveling and they lost all their wallet, they lost all their money. This person is called Ibn Sabil. This person, you give them sadaqah, you give them zakat. وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ, and فَرِيضَةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَكِيمٌ, and this is an obligation imposed by Allah, and Allah is knowing and wise. So Allah tells us who to give the zakat to. Of course, during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, during the time of the Imams, who is the one who collects the zakat? Rasulullah and the Imams. They're the ones who would send people. They say, okay, you give this person zakat, you give that person the zakat. After the death of the Prophet, who started collecting the zakat? The Imam is supposed to be, but was the Imam, did Imam Ali, was he given permission? Was he given the ability to rule? He wasn't. So the governments, they started collecting. The Khalifa, Yazid and Muawiyah and Harun and Ma'mun, they started collecting the zakat, and they built their empires off of the zakat that the Muslims have to give. So this is why tomorrow we're going, or the next time we meet, Monday, we're going to talk about this, the khums. Today, khums, Sunnis don't give khums. Or there's a difference in opinion regarding the khums. The Prophet, during his time, he did not collect khums, except on certain things. Later on, the Imams, they started telling people, you have to give khums. If Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa had told people to give khums, then when the Khilafah was taken away from Imam Ali and the Imams, the Khalifa would have collected the khums and nothing would remain for the Imams. So there was a strategic delay in the order of making the khums obligatory. For this reason, we will talk about it later. But basically, the zakat also needs to be spent by the permission of the Imam. By the permission of the Imam. Right now, the Imam is not around. So we look at the maraji', we look at the scholars. If they have given permission for zakat to be spent in a specific place, or the khums to be spent in a specific place, then we give it to that location. So another very important question is, if I see a poor person, if I see a poor mu'min, Shi'i, follower of the Ahl Bayt, this person is poor, I could give this person my zakat. Because the Quran says, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. How do I know who is poor? Yes, sister. So here, مُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ is to bring them to Islam. I don't think it would apply. Scholars, they say the wajib zakat, it should probably go towards a Muslim. But the non-wajib zakat, which we talked about in the beginning, sadaqah. Right now I have a box in my house, I put sadaqah in it. This is mustahab. This is recommended. This is not wajib. This one I could give it to anyone I want. Yeah, so different scholars have different opinions on this because some of it needs to go to a mu'min, it needs to go to a believer. Um, other they say the mustahab sadaqah. Like right now, I drive and I see a homeless person. I don't need to ask this person. I take money out of my wallet and I give this person money. This is good, and this attracts them. But the wajib, we're talking about the obligatory zakat. The imam is the one who tells us how to spend that. Yes. So, but we know that the imams of the Ahlul Bayt, they used to give. For example, Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he was ruling Kufa, he was walking in the market and he saw an old man begging. He saw an old man begging, and Imam Ali, he asked, Ma hada? He didn't ask man hada. He didn't ask who is this guy. He asked, what is this? What does that mean? That means seeing someone begging is a strange phenomenon in the government that Imam Ali is ruling. He says, Ma hada? What is this? They tell him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is a Christian man. He became old, so he is begging in the street. Now he can't work. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, he tells them, you used him when he was young, and now that he's old, you leave him out to beg like this? Give him from Bayt al-Mal. They gave from the Bayt al-Mal of the Muslims. So, yes, there are conditions, there are circumstances where it is allowed. There's different types of zakat. For example, zakat al-fitra, it needs to go to one group of people. This type of zakat, it could go to anyone. The khums, it needs to go to specific people. But generally speaking, the the mustahab charity, it could be given to anyone who's in need. Yes. Giving what? That means you pay the government so they give them? Or you give directly to the poor person? Well, when you give the government, does the government ask you to volunteer, or they take it from you without you knowing? They take it from you. So you have no choice. They already took it out of your salary before you even got the money in your bank. But if you have the choice to give to the government or not, then you should not give, because a lot of it goes to things that are not. Basically, you should choose how you want your money to be spent. You shouldn't just give it to some lobbyists. They come and they send it to make bombs and bomb little kids. So you don't choose to give. But if you don't have a choice, then yeah, it's okay. But it's not, you don't deduct it from your zakat. Sometimes I have people, they ask me, they say, Sayyid, the government, they take tax from me at the end of the year, or I have property tax. Can I consider that my khums and my zakat? Of course not. This is going in the government's pocket. You need to give the khums and zakat. It needs to go, it has its own cause. So this is where the zakat is spent. Basically, through the zakat, the Muslim government is able to finance itself. The philosophy behind it is that there should be no poor people in society. There should be no poor people in the community. And the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he says, Man bata shab'an wa jaruhu ja'i' laysa minni. The one who sleeps with a full stomach and his neighbor or her neighbor is hungry, this person is not from my ummah. This means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us, just as we focus on our prayer, we focus on our fasting, we focus on our hajj, we have to also think about the person next door, think about people in our community, if they're in need, and we have to give them. So this is all that I had for zakat. In the next session, we will talk about khums. Does anyone have any questions about zakat? No questions? Yes, sister. No. So basically, once you have it for 11 months, the animals, the cattle, there are conditions, but everyone has their own day that they give the zakat. Yes. Just like the khums, everyone has, you choose your own date and you choose that to be the date of your khums. Yes. Okay. والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل محمد وآل محمد. Mahdi, if you could share the